So I'm here with Kyle, part of Team 4682. He's the lead mechanical mentor and also the lead mentor of the team. So first off, what's your background and what do you major in?
So my background is I went to Penn State and majored in mechanical engineering and computer science. And then I did a lot of my senior project work around aerospace with a strong focus in testing setups, right? And so a lot of mechatronics as well. So a lot of integration between moving parts and electrical parts. So that's what I got my degree in, and then that led to my job at Boeing, where I work as a mechanical engineer, doing a lot of production support.
And is Boeing your first job?
Boeing was my first job, yeah.
And you've stayed there ever since?
And I have stayed there so far since.
What does a typical day on the job look like for you then?
So my job is kind of interesting. It's pretty niche field, actually. So what happens is the equivalency is I am a ER doctor for airplane parts, right? So what'll happen is there will be some problem that comes up during production, right? So whether it's somebody drilled the hole wrong or a design engineer, the two parts in their mating interface are now clashing, right? So any kind of problem, I get to come in, I get called in, right? And have to come up with a solution in 4 hours to turn that part around and get it out the door.
And what's your favorite part about your job?
I really personally like the variety, so I'm not working on the same thing for months at a time, right? I go in and I'm expected to have my whole problem diagnosed within 4 hours, right? We do get the occasional long things where we'll be talking with stress engineers, design engineers that'll go a little longer, but I really enjoy the variety that I get in my role.
And how much do you use your major in your job?
Every day. And it's little things that you wouldn't think about when you're taking class. Like it's something small from a materials class, right? The big thing with the major is it proves to somebody who's going to hire you that you can put some work in and stick with something, right? And then you have that baseline of knowledge. The interesting thing about my job is actually when I hired in with Boeing, I was actually trained additionally for an entire year before I was certified, right? So my job role is not super typical of engineers where you need additional certifications to do your job. There are some that do, but actually most engineering jobs you just get a degree and then you can go and do the engineering job.
And are there any interesting things being developed in your field?
It's pretty hard to talk about. I'm also not on the bleeding edge, right? But I do work on a fair amount of proprietary stuff, and I do, because of my job role, I see a lot of the problems that come up when somebody designs something new, right? So anytime that there's a new design that comes forward, there's almost always some problem somewhere with it, right? And so I'm seeing a lot of that. But yeah, it's kind of difficult to speak to anything specific because of the nature of the work that I do in the environment.
And if you were gonna do college today, would you major in the same things or would you change it?
I would definitely major in the same things. I would probably emphasize CS a little more so. It's definitely becoming a lot more important to have a background, at least be able to know how to code very simple things, even in your everyday. I was actually working on some problems that were coming up with an automated work cell, and I kind of jokingly made a remark that I could code a better robot, and turns out they pulled me in onto that project, and then I actually helped them debug some of the problems in their code. So it's definitely a newer skill that a lot of people are pouring into right now. So it's going to become very competitive. So I can never speak to what the future is going to hold, because when I went to school, everybody wanted to be ME, mechanical engineer, right? Because there weren't a lot of us at the time. But when I graduated, there was this huge flood and influx, right? So as far as like what's going to be the most prevalently and important jobs of the future, there's definitely going to be CS components to every job moving forward. But yeah, don't lose those hard skills too, because they're super important.
And also, kind of going back to your job, is there anything that surprised you about your job?
So I had already interned with them, so I knew basically the job I was going to do.
Is there anything that surprised you, like interning then? Like your first time on the site?
Not so. I was kind of lucky when I went to school in that my senior project was with Boeing, and we tackled a whole spectrum. So we created an entire test jig. We fabricated a prototype, and we were able to install it. We were only expected to handle one of those things. And so the fact that we were able to do all of that exposed me to a lot of people, a lot of job roles. I mean, I guess I'm probably numb to it now, but it's always cool working on airplanes, right? And seeing how far airplanes have come. Like if you go to the museum and you look at warbirds, right, from World War II, you see this massive plane for this one little tiny pilot, right? You see paintings of airplanes, right, and you think they're fairly small for one person, right? But they're actually huge.
Yeah.
And then when you look at like the bombers that are holding like a ton of people, they don't really seem that big. And if you put like the bombers from World War II next to like a 777 that I'm around on a daily basis, they look like little ants. They're so small. So like the bomber airplanes from World War II are like just as big as like a 737. So that was something pretty surprising to me.
Yeah. And also going back to like your internship, is that what like a typical entry-level position looks like?
For Boeing, that's how they do it, yeah. So Boeing internships, for the most part, are offered in a vacant seat, right? So the idea for Boeing with an intern is they want to convert you to that seat when you come back, right? That's generally how they do their internships.
All right. And do you know of like any college experience that like companies look for in new hires?
College experience
Or
in
just
new
any-
hires. So when I'm looking at people, I'm looking for stuff outside of the curriculum, whether it's an activity like Formula SAE, or you know their project involved a lot of machining. I want to know a story, right? So I want to see what you've struggled with and how you've gotten over it, how you've iterated, right? So I'm more interested, and I mean, it's difficult to put this stuff in a resume too, right? But I'm super interested when I look at a resume, if you're like if your like bullet points are kind of weaving more of a story rather than just hitting, I have this skill, I have this skill, I have this skill, right? So I have this skill that I used to do this, right? So trying to weave it into more of like a story of how you use the skill versus just check boxes.
That leads to my next question of like what traits you look for in people you're looking to hire.
Yeah. So for me in particular, teamwork is super important. Especially in my job role. So we're constantly working with mechanics, other engineers, other stress engineers, right? So, and you're also telling somebody potentially that, hey, your design didn't work. Or you're going to a mechanic and it's, you made a mistake here, but don't worry, I'm going to fix this, right? So That team, if you don't have good teamwork and communication skills, in my job role in particular, you're gonna struggle.
Alright. And for college, what did you do there that you like loved or like you wish you did in college?
That I wish I did in college.
Or something you did do that you loved to do?
I mean, I was actually super big into sports in college, I'll be honest. So it was just not super typical of engineers. And then I did a lot of extra outside work. So I actually almost got a film degree, right? So I changed over a lot of my humanities and arts to skew more that way. So I have a huge graphic media background as well, which I don't think a lot of people would expect.
Yeah. And do you have like any particular like moment in STEM that just like your favorite moment or like something you remember to this day?
I mean, the thing that's going to stand the test of time right now is we took the team to Worlds, right? So
That's
this is the team's second year, right? Since I took over, and we got second in the Pacific Northwest, which is not an easy thing to do. I still don't know how we did it. And then that qualified us for Worlds, which both of those times it was our team's first time at district champs. And then to take it to Worlds, we'll see what's in store for this team.
Yeah. Do you have like a moment that you know like outside of FIRST Robotics?
Outside of FIRST, so like from work,
Just like your favorite experience in STEM so far?
oh, it's this.
Well, other than FIRST.
Other than this, no, it's this.
Okay. And is there any like parting advice you have for people pursuing a STEM career?
Any advice for STEM careers?
Saying, like,
It's gonna suck. It's gonna be hard, right? So you're gonna need a degree for almost anything in STEM these days, right? And it's not fun. I mean, some people, there's gonna be the professors that make a subject fun, and there's also gonna be professors that are gonna make the subject the worst subject you've ever had, right? But it's learning what you can while you're there, right? And then you're gonna basically relearn everything you just learned when you go to your company, right? And then my big thing too is it's kind of my job role not to specialize in anything, to leave yourself more broad, because once you start going, you get your degree, you're narrowing you down to basically engineering job roles, right? Although engineering could transfer. There's engineers who go and become doctors, right? But if you're looking to get hired, it's harder for an engineer to become a doctor than it would be for somebody who's pre-med, right? So your major will focus your scope, right? And then your master's will focus your scope even more. So I always recommend before you do something like a master's, make sure you kind of work with the professor you're going to work with, and then also try to get like some TA time or like intern with that grad program that you're looking at before you fully commit to it, because once you're in there, you're kind of stuck and committed. And then your focus for hiring is going to go down tremendously, right? And then once you get that first job, your degree, for the most part, kind of just falls away, right? So everybody's going to be asking you job questions about what you do on the daily.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Mm-hmm.